All right, so we are live here. Give everyone a minute to kind of join in and get going, and we will get started on this. Hopefully, your day's going well so far. Appreciate you guys joining us here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us on. Really excited to, talk about what we do as a company, give a little bit of background on us and more importantly, how we can help shops, scale and grow their business.
Yeah. And so wanted to kind of just do kind of a little bit of background. And Alex and I have been talking about this, and I'd heard about his software, kind of demoed it before, and then we officially kind of met in person at Vision. And what we're doing here is a couple webinars here in the next couple weeks, and Alex is the first of this, is highlighting technology solutions that help, work alongside your business. We have all heard about the increase of AI and utilizing technology to make our lives easier. And that is literally exactly what Alex's software does. So I'm really excited to have Alex on here today, learn a little bit more about his software and share it with you guys here. But the basic idea here is Alex's software allows you to find lost money in your business, right? He's already working with a number of shops out there. And specifically, and I'm going to oversimplify this, but the core of it is based around making sure that you're paying what you think for parts, right? We're not missing cores, we're not missing returns, we're not missing warranties, but then does stuff you probably never even thought about, right? Have you ever noticed a vendor's charging you shipping and they're not supposed to be charging you shipping? In the past, it was so labor intensive that a lot of people kind of made a break even analysis on this of saying, hey, I might be missing $20 here, $30 there, but how much is my time worth or my team's time worth to find this? Now, what if you could have a software in the background that is running and highlighting this stuff automatically so that instead of having your team searching for stuff, they can just be looking to fix these solutions or fix these issues and find this money. So going to have Alex do his intro here, do a little presentation. Want to just let everyone know that I'm going to kind of let him go and demo this product so that you guys can all see this. And then at the end of this, we'll leave some time for Q&A so that you can kind of go in and badger him with whatever questions you might have. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I've already done this demo. I mean, obviously, this is right in my wheelhouse here of numbers and stuff like this. But yeah, Alex, take it from here. Appreciate you having coming on here and a little bit about yourself, and let's get into it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Hunt. I really appreciate that. And before I get going, is the screen shared at this point? Perfect. Yeah, so a little bit of background about myself, but more importantly, myself and the team. Our company is WickedFile. We're all about helping you as a business find the profits that may not be ending up in your pocket, helping to increase efficiency and more importantly, reduce the amount of time that you're spending on low value tasks in the back office. And the cool thing about our solution is everybody can use it. The service advisor can use it, the bookkeeper can use it, the owner can use it, and even the accounting team. And it all really started with, us as a company with our co-founder, Bob Saladna. He's the guy on the far right there. He has owned and managed car shops for 40 plus years. And if you haven't noticed by the last name, it's a family run company. We're all related. And he actually had quite a bit of money that went missing. In fact, it was about $180,000. And he has owned, multiple shops in Georgia and Texas. With all that growth came this underlying need to track and understand where all of these parts are going. And when he saw this issue of money leaving his shop, like what I just gave as an example right there, but then in other instances too, he said, hey, there's got to be a better way to fix this. There's got to be a better way to understand where the money and where the parts are going in my business without having to sift through all of this work that he has today that quite frankly his team couldn't handle. And when he talked to his peers in the space, all of them ran into the same exact issue. They had a vendor that owed them $20,000 in credits, or, maybe it was $2,000 in credits, right? Or they had, a transmission that was, supposed to be sent back as a core that they had ordered and they never got the core credit back, or, it's just the same story over and over again. And so we've developed this solution to fix this problem and to help make it easier for these owners of these auto repair shops, but then also their back office, do what they do best, way more efficiently. Our CTO, he has about 20 plus years in military software development experience in the Air Force. So he's worked on the F-35 project. He's done some massive projects for the Air Force that has saved them over $1 billion. And he's brought a lot of this inventory management expertise to our team to allow us to build the best and most secure solution that we could possibly build. And then myself, I have experience working in data analytics and software as well. Now, what we see with this and what our real goals are with the solution are three simple things. Number one, we want to be able to save time. So with our solution, we see users are able to find documents in 90% less time than what they were doing before. And more importantly, give users access to these documents no matter where they are. So they're no longer confined to just the file cabinet as the only source of truth for everything they need, or they're no longer sifting through Google Drive and trying to find that one document in a stack of 50 pages. We also see users reduce the time to complete the most repetitive and low value back office tasks that they're doing today, like matching invoices to statements and stuff like that, by as much as 60%. And on top of that, we find that the average amount of revenue that's unaccounted for per month with our customers, and I'm talking about this from the terms of, not a 10 shop location, but, per shop or, in 1 to 2 shop locations. So as the scale grows, you can think about how much this number can grow by as much as $2,000. And that unaccounted for dollar figure could mean a lot of different things, including, hey, I have something that wasn't reported on the RO that may still be in the shop, and it's our opportunity to get that profit back into our pocket. And, with all of this, time reduction and savings, it's really targeted around the goal of, hey, how can we take what you see today, the file cabinet, and how can we make this something that completely goes away from your business? You have a fully digital solution. All of your documents are scanned and digitalized. Everybody has access to your documents now, but more importantly, we're using AI and machine learning to help match up your invoices and statements and your documents together to give you a clear picture of what's going on in your business. And more importantly, what specific invoices and credits and returns should your team be focusing on, because they're not able to find these right now. So how we actually do all of this and what does it look like? Well, it's pretty simple. So what we do is we take all of your documents. They get digitalized if they're physical today, so you can scan them up. You can actually give an email address to your vendors and have your vendors email documents straight into WickedFile, so you don't even need to scan those if they support email invoicing. We integrate with Dropbox and Google Drive today. So we've had users dump as much as 13,000 documents into our system at once, and we've parsed through all of these documents in a matter of a few hours. And when these documents go into WickedFile, we automatically group and categorize these documents for you. So we'll group your documents by location. We'll group them by the date. So, when were these documents, when did these transactions occur, and when were they uploaded? And we also categorize them whether or not they're a credit or an invoice or a return slip / RMA or a statement even. So our system actually breaks all of that down for you so you don't have to. You just send the document and forget. And when these documents go into our system, we start to go through a couple of different things. So first of all, if an invoice comes into our system, what we first do is look at all of the line items. That includes the parts. That includes items like the invoice number. We're looking at things like the date, even the shipping line item. So when that invoice comes in and we see instances like this where you paid $11 for a part but had $41 of shipping, you're able to quickly see that bubble up to the top of all of your invoices and say, hey, why did we pay $41 in shipping? What happened here? And more importantly, we connect all of these items to your repair orders as well. So you can validate your margins and see, hey, it's great that we paid $41 in shipping, but did that actually go into our ticket from TechMetric or Shopware or whatever solution we're using? So that way your margins are correct. We also look at things like tax as well. and make sure that you are understanding what quarterly taxes or monthly tax charges you're accounting for. And, this is something that a lot of shops often overlook. And we have a customer that has, when they first came on board, they were a transmission repair shop, and they were constantly bringing in, transmissions left and right. They were ordering them from dealerships, and these transmissions were coming in just on the back of trucks. And when they started using WickedFile, they were uploading all of their documents. And what they began to see was they were getting dinged $150 per transmission that was being delivered. And over time, this had mounted up to thousands of dollars just in shipping costs in a matter of a few months. Well, once they noticed this with WickedFile, they're able to download all of their invoices. They're able to call up that dealership and say, hey, see all these shipping charges? We do a lot of business with you. We shouldn't be paying this. Can you credit us back for all of these shipping charges that you have incurred? And they said, yeah. And they credited them back for all of it. And that was their first month using WickedFile. So that's just how powerful these little charges that get slipped in between the lines can really be for a business. And that was a one location business. We also take those invoices and statements and all of those documents in there and match it up to your repair orders as well. So we integrate with a lot of different shop management systems, and you can see some of those up there at the top. So TechMetric, Protractor, NapaTrax, Shopware, Mitchell. And every hour we pull in all of the repair orders into our system. And when we do that, we'll compare those to all the line items on your invoice automatically. And so we'll be able to tell you if an item that was bought on an invoice that isn't matching up to a return, if that's not showing up on the repair order. So was that costed out to the customer or not? Or if an item is discounted by as much as 50% or 70% or even 10%, we'll bubble that up to you as well and say, hey, these amounts that you have on here aren't matching up. So you're obviously not getting the full benefit of what you're paying into this part, and your margins are off as well. And we also look and ensure that if, multiple parts are purchased because you find it cheaper somewhere or something like that, is that item that was replaced, that was ordered, actually being credited back and actually being sent back to the vendor. And we also take those invoices and match them all up to statements automatically. So when those invoices come into the system, we ensure that they end up on the statement. If it's something like a dealership invoice, we make sure that that dealership invoice matches straight up to either the credit card or the bank statement that goes into the system. So I'm going to pause here for a second, and we're going to jump over to WickedFile, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what this system actually looks like and what it can mean for you. So this is the system right here. And as one of my customers has said to me, hey, this is just a simple checklist that I log into every day, and I can now see what's going on across my organization. And so we've got two simple views. The first view is transaction insights. And this is saying, what is everything that's going in and out of my business? And we have parts insights right here, which is saying, hey, where are all of the parts going inside of my organization today? And so I can immediately see things in red that I need to focus on. I can see things like my returns that are pending and waiting to be credited. And I can even see things like tax and shipping, just like what we talked about before. So let's take a look at some of our shipping charges. So I've got a shipping charge right here. I can click on this, $16. You can see for the month, we have about $138 of shipping charges. So I'm going to click on the $16 one. Immediately, WickedFile is going to pull up that invoice. You can see there's where we paid $16 down there at the bottom right. And I can click on this 100%, which tells me this item matched up to the repair order. Click on that RO and check it out. Here's the RO that came in. In this case, it came in from TechMetric. I have a 60% margin. This is awesome. I love it. But look at this. Here's $130 that was costed out. That's how much the part cost was, or the part cost that we incurred. If I come back to the invoice, there's the 130. But what happened to the shipping? The shipping was unaccounted for. So what does that mean? That 60% margin isn't a 60% margin. It's actually lower than that. But I never would have been able to detect that if I wasn't keeping track of those small costs. And this is one of the reasons I'll say why companies like TechMetric and Shopware love us, is because we pick up right where they leave off in areas like shipping and even areas like returns as well. So I'm going to jump back. I'm just going to filter again by my date. So we're looking at December in this case. And I'm going to come over to my parts insights. Now, I mentioned that these items are all line item matched when they come in. So I can come over here. I can see here all the parts that are matching up to my repair orders. So everything's great. I can click on this brake fluid that we ordered. You can see here it is on the invoice right here among some other items. And I can actually come back over and click on the repair order. And I can see right there, there's where the brake fluid matched up. So everything is matched. The amounts are perfect. Everything's good. And so the system's watching this stuff as these invoices come in. And if it sees situations like amount mismatch, for example, it'll let you know about that. So if I'm looking at something like, this coolant pipe, for example, I can see where I ordered something from SSF right here for $31. You can see here's where we paid $31 for it right here, the coolant pipe. I come back, I click on the repair order, and there's a lot of items on this repair order. But if I come down and I start to look for that coolant pipe, here it is right here for $16. So we discounted this part. But WickedFile was able to catch that by looking at the repair order, looking at the invoice, using its system and its AI to match these two up and say, hey, I see where this cost isn't adding up. And you really aren't paying a 40% margin on this. Your margin's actually less because of that. And I didn't have to do a thing. It just showed me where the problems were. And now it's my job or my bookkeeping team's job, or as an owner, maybe I'm doing it or I have a parts manager to now go in and fix that and take a look at it. And what's great is if you're a multi-shop owner and you don't have time to go to the shop and address this issue, or you're a bookkeeper of a multi-shop, well, guess what? You can create an assignment right here in WickedFile on that invoice, send it over to whoever that customer is right there, and it'll email them that invoice, and now they can look into that immediately. We also look at things like customer mischarges even as well. So let's say you bought something, right? And you can see we bought this item. It's showing up on the invoice. You can see it's a battery. And the first thing you might be asking me is, well, Alex, maybe it's a core return, right? Maybe. So I see it showed up on the invoice. I can click on the credit because remember, we're matching all our returns up to credits. I can see where that battery core showed up right there. There's the full battery. And I can actually open up the repair order too. And I can see where it showed up on the repair order. There's our battery right there again. So I have a battery that's on a repair order, a credit, and an invoice. And that's something that shouldn't be the case. And what I've heard from my customers is this is one of the greatest tools that they've had to keep their shops accountable with their customers. Because now if there's a mischarge, they call them up. They say, hey, we're really sorry. We messed up, but we're on top of it. We already credited you back for that line item we left on your repair order. And I've heard customers tell me this has resulted in 5-star reviews. People have told them, hey, you've got a customer for life, because in this industry, it's tough to build trust with your customers because there's so many people out there who have eroded the trust among the repair shop and the customer base. And so using something like this, it becomes really easy, but then really convenient to be able to see where some of those gaps are, where you can, build that rapport and build that trust with that customer and have a returning customer for years to come. And the last thing I want to talk about is managing your credits and your returns. So if I click on credits right here, you can see, I'm tracking my battery cores, or I'm tracking, different parts that I've returned. And now I can validate, hey, did this battery core that we had right here actually get returned back to the actual invoice itself? So if I come back over here, I'm just going to click on December. I'm just going to click on my credit again. And, here's our battery core. Oh, I think it was this one that we clicked on. So I can see it right here. There's the core. And then I can click on the credit and I can see the credit as well right there. The last thing I want to touch on before I leave you is, if you think about it, we're putting a lot of documents into the system. And with solutions today, when companies are digitalizing all of their documents, they're putting them into folders. They're looking them up. They're having to sift through all of these papers that are still stacked together because they were all scanned up together and spend a lot of time looking documents up. Well, now with WickedFile, you can easily search for any document you want. So let's say I wanted to find an RMA for an oil pan gasket. Well, all I do is type in oil pan gasket into WickedFile. I hit enter. It's going to run a search. I mentioned we categorize by date and by location. I can pick my location right here. I can select my time frame if I want, and it's not just limited to months, years, or weeks. I can even set a custom time frame, and I can set the type of document I want. So there's my return slip. I see right here, I've got 3 results now. I can click on this first one right here and check it out. It's a horrible scan, right? I can barely read it. You can barely read it. But if you zoom in and look really close, there's an oil pan gasket. And I was able to find that in a few seconds. And what's great is if I'm a service advisor and I need to look up an invoice, I could search by the invoice number, the part number, anything I want to find that item. I could even just type in the vendor and it'll show me exactly what I need right here. And it creates a lot less time, but also takes a lot of lift off of the shoulders of the bookkeeper because now the bookkeeper does not need to go and look for these documents on behalf of the service advisor or on behalf of the parts manager or the owner or whoever needs those invoices. Everybody has access to it, and it's as easy as searching for your favorite website on Google. So I really appreciate the time. And before I jump over to Q&A, I wanted to just let you know if you're interested in getting started with WickedFile, you want to do a trial, jump over to www.wickedfile.com. You can go to our website. You can check it out, see if this is something that you would want to use for your shop, or if you have questions or you want to talk to me or one of our team members, you can email us at info@wickedfile.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, the biggest thing that I got out of this, and I talked about this before, is I thought I knew what your software did until you showed me, right? I was like, okay, it's the general idea of what we do manually, right? Let's
Yep.
compare what we've purchased to what we think we've purchased and go line by line. But some of the things that you highlight there are like why this is, so powerful of, one of the examples where you were talking about, hey, I bought a part but it's not on an invoice. Those are notoriously the trickiest ones to figure out because they don't exist in TechMetric. They don't exist in Shopware. And also, it's extremely hard to outsource this stuff. We have clients that ask us all the time, hey, can you guys do parts reconciliation? And it's not really something that you can do with one person, right? Even in your own shop right now, if you're doing this manually, it's impossible to do this without communicating with your team because there's a lot of reasons why this stuff legitimately happens. Hey, yeah, we did have to get a new, camshaft position sensor because one of the guys broke the old one, right? So
Mhm.
no, we didn't leave money on the table. We screwed up. But we would never know that unless we go back to their parts manager, service advisor, and stuff like this. But having this highlight this stuff and look at it real time instead of, like I said, of spending time finding this of, hey, these are the problem areas. This is where we need to focus on to just, work smarter, not harder is huge.
Mhm.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions on here for Alex, going to leave some time here as well. But I had a couple questions for you just from like a personal standpoint. Is this something that you think is viable for all shops, right? I know that you work with a lot of larger shops, right? When for your business or your dad's business, it was obviously magnified when you have multiple locations and you're not there every single day. But do you see this for a shop doing 500,000 or 5 million? Is this something that works for everyone or what?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. And one of the things that I was lucky enough to see growing up as my dad opened shops and grew his shops was, no matter the size of the shop, whether you're one location or 8 locations or more, the problem of the back office and managing the efficiencies of your business is there. It just looks a lot different throughout the phases. For our smaller shops, who might be doing, maybe they are doing like $1 million a year in revenue, right? What we often see is they are, working to grow their business. They have maybe a single bookkeeper, or maybe even some of them are looking to hire their first bookkeeper, right? and they don't necessarily know quite yet, or they're trying to gauge, as their business grows and scales, how much is the bookkeeper going to be able to support? How much is the overall team going to be able to support? And I think the one thing that's really made that difficult as companies have scaled and grown that I've seen, and as I've talked to shop owners, is there's no concise solution, or no concise tool that the team can surround themselves with. So there's no tool that the bookkeeper can use to, see what parts are sticking out, right, and keep the service advisor in check. There's nothing that the service advisor can use to, log in and look for documents and find stuff that's missing, and, do their own work as well to make sure that their shop is running well. And the nice thing about this is, because it now has this, glue to kind of help bring the team even closer together, that also helps with, as you scale and grow your business, understanding, when you might need to hire more, or when you might need to, shift and pivot your business. So for small businesses, that's where I really see this thing drive a lot of value. And on top of that, for, your large multi-shop locations, let's call it 4, 5, 6, 8, 14 locations even. The problem that I see is, now you have the volume. There's so much volume moving around, and there's either a very strained, back office who's trying to keep up with this and trying to scale with the growth. And this is something that can take the most time consuming and busiest tasks that they run into off their shoulders, and let them put it on the overall team, the service advisor, the parts manager themselves, the owner, and really help disperse all of the workload that before was only limited to them, because they only had access to this information. And so what it does is, it makes that efficiency a lot better for everybody. It takes the workload off of the bookkeeper and lets them keep up with their business. And so, with that being said, the one thing I ask all, owners and bookkeepers, whether it's a single location or a multi-location, is, if you had an extra day, what is it that you would do? And I've never had one not ring off 20 different things that they would do. And that's what this thing is. It's that extra day without actually having to come into the office for an extra day. And more importantly, giving you greater flexibility. I had a bookkeeper, her son needed to get surgery, and she had to be out of the office for a few days to take care of him. She took all of her work with her on the road, and was able to knock everything out for that week and more, using that solution from her home, because all of the documents were with her in the cloud.
Yeah, and that's a great point on that, right? Because even when we get asked a lot about parts reconciliation, since, some of this is so like legitimately paper intensive on this, it's very hard to do this from a remote setting just from the document standpoint of this, right? And so just like you alluded to there, if you're doing this real time and you find a mismatch, what is that person doing? They're pulling the tickets, tech metric, shopware, your shop management might be cloud based. Not all vendors are, all right, or
Mm.
you're looking for a PO slip. Instead of doing that and kind of trying to go down through all these different file folders, this is all not only stored electronically, but also attached to each other, right? Instead of saying, hey, I need to find this invoice, this PO, all in separate buckets, the AI is actually linking all of those together, correct? Right? So that
Yep.
you're looking at, hey, instead of just looking at the charge, looking at the invoice, looking at the PO to the vendor in three separate things, it's all linked to that one transaction of, hey, here's it from our side, the customer side, and also even more so of where we actually paid this stuff as well too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, everything's fluid and everything connects. I mean, you saw how I was able to go from an invoice to a repair order to a credit, and, jump around between those documents easily. Before, there would have been a lot of, manual filing, a lot of stapling, and it's all great work, but what is the reason that you're doing that, right? The reason is, you want to make sure your dollars are accounted for. What we want to do is skip that step of the monotonous stapling and sorting, and just let you find out where the money is, and
Yeah.
let you focus your valuable time into just that, so you can have extra time to go negotiate contracts, right? Or go and call that vendor about those 4 credits that weren't given back to your shop. That's the stuff at the end of the day that translates to the value that helps grow your business.
Yeah, and to put in perspective, because those of you out there that are, watching this now or watching this later, if you're doing parts reconciliation, you're probably right now already seeing, the value of this of, oh my gosh, I know how much time this is going to save me. But just to put in perspective for people, let's say that you have a shop doing $1 million a year, $100,000 a month or something like that. If you are doing true old school parts reconciliation, you're probably throughout the month, spending at least 20 hours on this, right?
Yeah.
Realistically. And depending on how in depth you want to get, but at the very baseline, 20 hours on it. And factor in your, admin person's time, your own time on that, and think about what that 20 hours cost. Now, the downside to doing this manually is if there is no issues, right? Let's say that you are getting all of your cores, all of your warranties, everything is exactly right, which is probably never the case on it, but could be a good chance that there's nothing that you could actually figure out in those 20 hours. You just spent a lot of time and a lot of money and didn't get any real results. Versus if you were using something like WickedFile here, you wouldn't have spent any time because that dashboard that you showed would have all been blue, right? Would have all been matched. There's no red items. So that 20 hours is saved right there. Hey, unfortunately, I didn't find any money, but I just got back 20 hours. And I think sometimes, especially for self employed, and I can, commiserate with this, a lot of times time is almost more valuable than money. And once people start thinking differently like that, you have these cost benefit analysis of, hey, I don't really want to look at this because high level, I'm pretty close. I don't think that there's enough for me to gain here by diving into this. But, this is, like I said, finding stuff that you never would have been able to.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to have to put you on the spot here, though, Alex, because, we've seen this in the past and I've used stuff where it has, the text recognition. And sometimes what my clients find out, on these solutions is, hey, I'm spending more time getting information in here and, loading the documents and scanning this stuff in than I'm actually saving on the reconciliation side. So, for someone thinking that of like, well, how does all this stuff get in there? Talk a little bit about the way that works, or maybe even, how much time, if any, is even really needed by the client to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's funny because when we were first getting started, we had they're a 14 shop location, they're a customer of ours. They told us face value, we're not going to scan. We're like,
Hmm.
okay, well, how do we get documents scanned without making them scan? And we really started to think outside of the box on that. And so we did a couple of things. First off, if you're already using Google Drive or Dropbox today, there's no reason you should be re-uploading. We integrate with those automatically. Another option, and this was the option our 14 shop location did to reduce the amount of scanning by 70%. And the rest, they just take pictures with their phones now. They have that few documents that they need to upload by hand, is email invoicing. So a lot of vendors today, especially big ones, are moving towards this paperless idea, right? The idea that we don't need to send paper anymore. We just want to email the invoices. We've really leaned into that. And so what we do is we have set up an email address. It's just one email address. You give it to that vendor and they email all their invoices, even if it's a multi-shop location, to that invoice or to that email. And then from there, it goes into WickedFile and we start to use our AI to separate all of the documents by reading the addresses in order to organize it by location, in order to organize them by date, in order to organize it the exact way that you saw when I was searching through these documents, but with way better quality. You don't get that faded RMA like what I showed earlier. And more importantly, the consistency goes up because now there's no middleman. It's just straight the vendor right to the file cabinet. And that gives instant results with a lot more clarity. And so that's been one of the ways that a lot of our customers have significantly reduced the amount of scanning that they need to do.
Yeah, and especially for a situation like a multi-shop owner too, of hey, we bought this part, I don't see this on the invoice, and let's say you have 6 locations, right? What if a vendor tagged that to the wrong location? WickedFile is going to show this on either side. Hey, this location we have a purchase with no sale on it. This
Mhm.
location we have a sale with no purchase. You can now cross-reference those things and say, hey, yeah, they billed the wrong company on this, but we can kind of account for all of that.
Yeah.
Or also, like you said too, of hey, you know what? We're missing this statement on it. 99% of this stuff goes electronically. Instead of me going and finding that, the service advisor probably has that copy on his desk. You could tag your service advisor and is correct and say, hey, take a picture of that invoice and put it in here.
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that. I had a shop that I was demoing to, and the shop right down the road from them had given us permission to, demo their invoices and the stuff that they had. So we, especially early on, really benefited from them, letting us do that. And, they were fine with us demoing to the shop across the street. And so we were doing that. And he asked, he's like, well, type in the name of my shop in here. So we did. And we actually found invoices from a vendor where they had been accidentally dropping off invoices at this other shop from a different company. And I was able to find that as easily as typing in the name of that other shop inside of the search box. And both shops were ecstatic over that because that shop across the street had a great relationship with them. They didn't want their stuff and they wanted to make sure their books were straight. The shop that we were talking to immediately bought it because they were like, this is insane. And by the way, send me those invoices. So they loved it.
Yeah, and the big thing on that too is, this is not an indictment on any parts vendor, right? This is not a bash on Worldpac, Advanced, Napa, whoever it is. Really, this is we're using computers to catch human errors, right? Think about
Mhm.
that driver that is coming to pick up that core return. Are they deliberately trying to not give you the credit? No, but things happen. Hey, we get busy. You throw it back on the shelf. You forget to scan it in, or even we see so many times of, hey, someone got the credit for that, but they were typing too fast, right? And
Yep.
there's three Aaron's Automotives in town, and they keep on tagging the wrong one. And
Yep.
so that can work on both sides of it. Of, hey, Aaron's Automotive got the credit for that return, wasn't the correct one. But I've also seen just as easily of, invoices come over and saying, why did we pay this guy 8,000 when we only bought 6,000?
Yeah.
And you start looking down through there, and a lot of times the PO number jumps out. Hey, that is different than our PO numbers. Oh, we have stuff going into the wrong one. If you're not looking at this, you have no idea if that's happening or not, right? And so I would say the best case scenario is if you use WickedFile and you don't find anything. It's like, hey, rest assured that nothing is going wrong right now, but who's to say that something doesn't happen next month or the
Yep.
following month? Or also just these small bleeds, right? And we talk about fraud, and fraud is often looked at as deliberate or criminal, but a lot of times it's inadvertent on this. But I always tell people, if it is done correctly and is done in smaller amounts, it is virtually impossible to find, right? $20 here, $30 here.
Yep.
I think that there's probably no one that is listening to this that there couldn't be something like that leaking out of their business. And you probably admit that as well. And you could never find it. But what's that? $600, $1,000 a month that's leaking out the door. That's a small enough drip where you don't notice it. And this is where we have to use technology to not only highlight that stuff, but also give your team the tools, right? I know how to do parts reconciliation because unfortunately or fortunately, I do this stuff all day, every day, right? Your bookkeeper, your office manager might be a very detail oriented person, but doesn't know the tools to say, hey, we have an issue. I don't even know where to start, right? This gives them a foundation. This almost gives them a roadmap to say, hey, you don't even really need to understand what this is doing. Highlight the areas that need to be highlight. It's going to tell you, hey, we don't have this invoice. Put this in here, and then be able to kind of hopefully find some of the stuff that's slipping through the cracks.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very cool.
I completely agree.
Awesome. I think we pretty much covered most of the high points on this. You got your information on there. So best way for people to get a hold of you is what? Shoot you an email, reach out and set up a time to demo this and talk more specifically about how their shop works or what.
Yeah, yeah, you can shoot me an email directly at info@wickedfile.com, or if you go to our website and scroll down to the bottom of the page, just the homepage, you'll see a portal there to actually, set up and schedule a demo as well. So they both go to the same email. Either one works, but yeah, well, we'd love to set up some time, get to know your shop better, and hopefully get the chance to show you how we can really bring value to your store and your team as well.
Yeah, appreciate it, Alex. And I just think it's awesome. It was created with the shop mindset, right? You're coming from inside the industry. And when you started talking about this stuff, I said, this is going to be awesome. I mean, these are the pain points that you guys had in your own shop, but this is a pain point that every single shop in America has, whether they know it or not. And, allowing people to utilize this software for a very reasonable price is really changing people. Like you
Yep.
said, of signing up these big, huge multi location ones. Obviously, the stakes are higher for this, but for the small shop out there that might not have the manpower to be able to do this, this is a solution that they probably could even do in the past because there's just not enough time in the day.
Yep.
So yeah, just want to say thank you again for coming on here. Appreciate it. Guys, check them out. I've seen this stuff firsthand. I have clients that use this. It works. It's paying for itself. It's saving people time. And then also some of these non-financial stuff of the file cabinet, right? Of being able to go and say, I know we bought this, sway bar. I don't remember what car it was, what vendor. being able to search something like that is, an unintended benefit of the software that is, just really, really cool. So appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me, and hope you enjoyed this.
Yep. Thanks, Hunt. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.